The strange junkyard discovery. The night was silent and the junkyard stretched like an endless sea of broken machines. Rusty towers of old ships leaned against each other, their sharp edges glowing faintly under the pale moon. The air smelled of oil and dust, and every step made a crunching sound on broken glass. A lone human walked through the piles of scrap. His name was Daniel, a scavenger who searched the junkyard every night for anything valuable. He lived a hard life, always alone, always hoping that one day he would find something worth more than a few credits. But this night felt different. He could feel it in the cold wind brushing against his face. Daniel carried a small lamp made from an old engine battery. Its weak light flickered as he moved between the twisted skeletons of ships. He was looking for wires, metal plates, maybe an engine part he could sell. But suddenly he heard something strange. It was not the usual sound of the wind or the echo of metal. Shifting, it was soft, almost hidden. Like a whimper, he stopped, holding his breath. For a moment the junkyard was silent again, then he heard it once more. A faint sound, like someone crying. Daniel's heart beat faster. Who would cry here, in a place where no one ever came? He followed the sound carefully, moving the lamp from side to side. The junkyard seemed darker than before, as if the shadows were trying to hide something. He climbed over a pile of broken ship wings, and on the other side, he froze. There, between two giant heaps of twisted metal, was a small open space. In the corner, half hidden under a broken cargo door, he saw movement. At first he thought it was an animal, but when he stepped closer, the lamp revealed the truth. It was a child, not a human child, but an alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes large and shining even in the dark. She looked weak, her clothes torn, her small hands clutching a piece of cloth like it was treasure. Beside her lay another figure, an older alien woman, probably her mother. The mother's body looked thin, tired, and almost lifeless. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. He had heard stories of aliens wandering near the junkyard, but he never believed them. And now, here they were, right in front of him, a mother and her daughter, hiding like broken things in a world of scrap. The little girl looked up at him with wide eyes full of fear. She pulled the cloth tighter around her, as if ready to protect her mother. Daniel raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. "It's okay," he whispered, though his voice trembled. "I won't hurt you." The girl did not answer, but her eyes followed his every move. Her mother tried to speak, but only a weak sound escaped her lips. Daniel knelt down, his lamp flickering across their faces. Could see hunger, exhaustion, and despair written on them. These two had suffered for a long time. 1,000 thoughts rushed through his mind. He knew aliens were not welcome in this part of the city. If someone else found them, they would be taken away, or worse, helping them could bring him trouble he could not imagine. And yet how could he walk away? Daniel took a small bottle of water from his bag and held it out. The girl hesitated, but when her mother touched her hand weakly, she reached for it. She drank carefully, as if afraid the water might disappear. Then she gave it to her mother, who drank with trembling hands. Daniel felt something stir inside him. For years he had been alone, but now, in this broken junkyard, he felt a connection stronger than fear. He gave them a piece of dry bread, the only food he had left. The girl ate quickly, then stopped and offered half to her mother. That simple act, the child choosing to share even when she was starving, touched Daniel's heart deeply. The night grew colder, and Daniel knew they could not survive like this. He looked around at the mountains of scrap. An idea began to form in his mind. Could use the junk, the broken pieces of ships, to build them a small shelter. It would not be much, but it would keep them safe from the freezing nights. But just as he was thinking this, a strange sound echoed above. Engines, distant but clear. Daniel froze, listening. The girl grabbed her mother's hand tightly, her eyes wide with terror. Whoever was in those ships, they were looking for someone. Daniel quickly moved the cargo door, hiding them better. His heart raced. He had to decide. Walk away and stay safe, or risk everything for two strangers. The engines faded into the distance, but the danger was real. Daniel knew his life was about to change forever. He looked at the alien girl, her small face filled with hope and fear. In that moment, Daniel made his choice. He would not leave them. No matter what dangers came, no matter what enemies hunted them, he would protect them, even if he had to build a home out of the junk around him. The junkyard was no longer just a place of broken things. It had become the place where a human found a reason to fight again. And as the night deepened, Daniel knew this discovery was only the beginning, the decision that changed everything. The cold wind blew across the junkyard, carrying with it the metallic smell of rust and smoke. Daniel sat near the broken cargo door where the alien girl and her mother hid, his old lamp flickering weakly. His heart was heavy with questions. What was he supposed to do now? He was just a scavenger, a man who searched for scraps of metal to survive. He was not a hero, not a fighter, not someone who could challenge the dangerous world outside. And yet, when he looked at the alien girl's wide eyes staring at him, with silent hope he felt something stir inside. She was so young, so fragile, and her mother was barely alive. If he left them here, they would not see another sunrise. Daniel rubbed his tired face with both hands. His whole life he had walked, alone, never daring to care for anyone. It was safer that way, safer to live without attachments. But now, fate had placed these two in front of him. He knew he had to make a choice. Help them, or walk away. The mother tried to sit up, her thin arms shaking as she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. Please, help her. She looked at her daughter, her eyes filled with both love and sorrow. Daniel swallowed hard. Those two words pierced his chest like a blade. He could not ignore them. Still, fear gripped him. Aliens were not welcome in this city. If anyone found out he was hiding them, the soldiers would come and he would lose everything. He could be arrested, maybe even executed. Why should he risk his life for strangers? As he sat there, the girl crawled closer to her mother and held her hand tightly. She whispered something in a language Daniel didn't understand, but he didn't need to know the words. He understood the meaning. The girl was begging her mother not to leave her. Her small shoulders shook as silent tears ran down her face. That sight broke the last wall inside Daniel's heart. He clenched his fists and stood up. No, he muttered to himself. I won't leave them. It didn't matter what the cost was. For the first time in years, he felt like he had a purpose. Daniel looked around the junkyard, scanning the endless sea of broken ships and twisted machines. He could use this place, he thought. He could build something from the scrap. Maybe a small shelter, maybe even a safe hiding spot. If he worked fast, he could keep them alive for at least a few days. But just as he began to plan, the distant roar of engines echoed again. This time louder, closer. The alien girl stiffened, her small hands gripping her mother's arm. Daniel quickly turned off his lamp, pressing himself against the cold metal. In the distance, he saw light sweeping over the piles of junk. Someone was searching. His heart pounded as he crouched low. He could hear voices, sharp, metallic, unfriendly. Soldiers, no doubt. They were hunting for something, or someone. Daniel knew immediately. They were looking for the mother and her daughter. He glanced at the two, hidden beneath the cargo door. The girl's eyes were wide with terror, her lips pressed tightly together so she would not make a sound. The mother's breathing was weak, but she pulled the girl close, protecting her with what little strength she had. Daniel's mind raced. If the soldiers found them, it would be the end. Slowly, he picked up a rusted pipe from the ground, his hands trembling. It was a useless weapon against real soldiers, but it was all he had. He could run and save himself, but his feet refused to move. Instead, he stayed, ready to fight if it came to that. The searchlights passed dangerously close. The shadows of the junkyard stretched like monsters, hiding and revealing shapes with every flash. Daniel's breath came slow and heavy. The voices grew louder, then softer, then faded into the distance. Finally, the sound of the engines moved away, disappearing into the night. He let out a long breath, his body trembling from the tension. The girl peeked out, her small face pale but alive. Daniel gave her a weak smile. though his heart was still pounding. "They'll come back," he whispered, "and next time they'll search harder." The alien mother coughed weakly, her hand glowing faintly as she clutched something hidden beneath her clothes. Daniel noticed it for the first time, a strange metallic device no bigger than his hand. It pulsed with a soft blue light. "What is that?" he asked. But the mother only shook her head, too weak to explain. He understood one thing. This device was important. It was the reason the soldiers were hunting them, and if they wanted it so badly, it meant danger for all of them. Daniel sat back, his decision now carved into stone. He would not walk away. He would fight. He would build. He would protect, even if the whole city turned against him. The junkyard was not just a place of trash anymore. It had become the stage of something far greater, a human, an alien child, and her mother. 3 broken lives thrown together by fate. The decision was made. There was no turning back. And as the stars shone faintly above, Daniel knew that this was only the beginning of a story far larger than he could imagine. The decision that changed everything. The cold wind blew across the junkyard, carrying with it the metallic smell of rust and smoke. Daniel sat near the broken cargo door, where the alien girl and her mother hid, his old lamp flickering weakly. His heart was heavy with questions. What was he supposed to do now? He was just a scavenger, a man who searched for scraps of metal to survive. He was not a hero, not a fighter, not someone who could challenge the dangerous world outside. And yet, when he looked at the alien girl's wide eyes staring at him, with silent hope he felt something stir inside. She was so young, so fragile, and her mother was barely alive. If he left them here, they would not see another sunrise. Daniel rubbed his tired face with both hands. His whole life he had walked, alone, never daring to care for anyone. It was safer that way, safer to live without attachments. But now, fate had placed these two in front of him. He knew he had to make a choice. Help them, or walk away. The mother tried to sit up, her thin arms shaking as she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "Please, help her?" She looked at her daughter, her eyes filled with both love and sorrow. Daniel swallowed hard. Those 2 words pierced his chest like a blade. He could not ignore them. Still, fear gripped him. Aliens were not welcome in this city. If anyone found out he was hiding them, the soldiers would come and he would lose everything. He could be arrested, maybe even executed. Why should he risk his life for strangers? As he sat there, the girl crawled closer to her mother and held her hand tightly. She whispered something in a language Daniel didn't understand. But he didn't need to know the words. He understood the meaning. The girl was begging her mother not to leave her. Her small shoulders shook as silent tears ran down her face. That sight broke the last wall inside Daniel's heart. He clenched his fists and stood up. "No," he muttered to himself. "I won't leave them." It didn't matter what the cost was. For the first time in years, he felt like he had a purpose. Daniel looked around the junkyard, scanning the endless sea of broken ships and twisted machines. He could use this place, he thought. He could build something from the scrap. Maybe a small shelter, maybe even a safe hiding spot. If he worked fast, he could keep them alive for at least a few days. But just as he began to plan, the distant roar of engines echoed again. This time louder, closer. The alien girl stiffened, her small hands gripping her mother's arm. Daniel quickly turned off his lamp, pressing himself against the cold metal. In the distance, he saw light sweeping over the piles of junk. Someone was searching. His heart pounded as he crouched low. He could hear voices, sharp, metallic, unfriendly. Soldiers, no doubt. They were hunting for something, or someone. Daniel knew immediately they were looking for the mother and her daughter. He glanced at the two, hidden beneath the cargo door. The girl's eyes were wide with terror, her lips pressed tightly together so she would not make a sound. The mother's breathing was weak, but she pulled the girl close, protecting her with what little strength she had. Daniel's mind raced. If the soldiers found them, it would be the end. Slowly, he picked up a rusted pipe from the ground, his hands trembling. It was a useless weapon against real soldiers, but it was all he had. He could run and save himself, but his feet refused to move. Instead, he stayed, ready to fight if it came to that. The searchlights passed dangerously close. The shadows of the junkyard stretched like monsters, hiding and revealing shapes with every flash. Daniel's breath came slow and heavy. The voices grew louder, then softer, then faded into the distance finally. The sound of the engines moved away, disappearing into the night. He let out a long breath, his body trembling from the tension. The girl peeked out, her small face pale but alive. Daniel gave her a weak smile, though his heart was still pounding. "They'll come back," he whispered, "and next time they'll search harder." The alien mother coughed weakly, her hand glowing faintly as she clutched something hidden beneath her clothes. Daniel noticed it for the first time, a strange metallic device no bigger than his hand. It pulsed with a soft blue light. "What is that?" he asked, but the mother only shook her head, too weak to explain. He understood one thing. This device was important. It was the reason the soldiers were hunting them, and if they wanted it so badly, it meant danger for all of them. Daniel sat back, his decision now carved into stone. He would not walk away. He would fight. He would build. He would protect, even if the whole city turned against him. The junkyard was not just a place of trash anymore. It had become the stage of something far greater. A human, an alien child, and her mother. 3 broken lives thrown together by fate. The decision was made. There was no turning back. And as the stars shone faintly above, Daniel knew that this was only the beginning of a story far larger than he could imagine. The secret of the alien mother. The junkyard had become quieter in the past few days. Daniel worked endlessly to strengthen the small shelter, turning broken panels into walls and discarded wires into traps. The alien girl helped him in her small ways, carrying scraps or handing him tools, her eyes now bright instead of afraid. Her laughter was rare, but each time she laughed, the sound lifted the weight in Daniel's chest. But the mother remained weak. She stayed on the blanket, her breaths shallow, her skin pale, her strength fading like a dying flame. Daniel worried every night that she would not live until morning, and yet he noticed something strange. Whenever she touched the glowing device hidden under her torn clothes, her eyes regained a flicker of energy. Daniel had seen it many times. The device was small, smooth, and alive with a soft blue glow. It looked like no technology he had ever seen. It pulsed gently, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. He wanted to ask, but each time he tried, the mother shook her head, her lips pressing together in silence. On the 4th night, as the cold wind howled outside the shelter, the mother finally spoke. Her voice was faint, but her eyes were sharp with warning. "You should leave us," she whispered. Daniel frowned. "Leave you? After all I've done?" "No, I can't do that." Her hand trembled as she pulled the device from under her clothes. The girl gasped and held onto her mother's arm, as if afraid she was giving away something sacred. The device glowed brighter in the lamplight, filling the room with a strange warmth. Daniel leaned closer, his heart beating fast. "What is it?" he asked. The mother looked at him with tired eyes. "This is the reason they are hunting us," she said, her voice breaking. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He had guessed it, but hearing her say it made it real. She continued slowly, every word heavy with pain. "We escaped from soldiers who served the Empire. They destroyed our ship, killed my people, and left us for dead." Her eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. "This device, it carries knowledge. Knowledge my people died to protect." She placed it in Daniel's hand. "It must not fall into their hands." Daniel stared at the glowing object. It was light but felt heavy with meaning. It hummed faintly, as if alive. "What kind of knowledge?" he asked, but the mother shook her head. "Too dangerous to speak, too dangerous for you to know." The alien girl looked between them, her big eyes wet with fear. Daniel could see she didn't understand everything, but she knew enough. She knew that this device was both hope and danger. He closed his fingers around it, feeling its strange warmth spread into his skin. Part of him wanted to throw it away, to rid himself of the danger it carried. But when he looked at the girl, he knew he couldn't. This was their life, their only chance of survival. The mother coughed hard, and Daniel quickly gave her water. After a long silence, she whispered, "You are risking your life for us." "Why?" Daniel thought for a moment, then answered, "Because no one else would." He looked at the girl who clutched her mother's hand tightly. "I can't walk. Away from this, not now." The mother studied him with tired but grateful eyes. "You are human," she said softly. "But your heart, it is stronger than many of my kind." She closed her eyes, resting again, her hand still on the device as if guarding it even in sleep. Daniel sat quietly for a long time, staring at the glowing object. The truth had been revealed. It was not just about survival anymore. He was protecting something far greater, something powerful enough to change everything. That night, his sleep was broken by distant sounds. Engines again, but this time sharper, closer. The girl woke too, her small body trembling as she clung to his arm. Daniel quickly moved to the shelter's doorway, gripping his pipe. Through the cracks, he saw faint lights moving across the junkyard. Soldiers searching again, he cursed under his breath. They were getting closer, their voices louder, their search more desperate. The device in his pocket pulsed stronger, almost as if it sensed the danger. Daniel realized the soldiers were not wandering blindly, they were being guided by the signal. His heart pounded. He turned back to the mother, whispering urgently, "This thing, it's calling them." Her eyes opened slowly, pain flashing across her face. "Yes," she whispered. "That is why I told you to leave us. They will not stop until they have it." Daniel shook his head firmly. "No, I won't leave." He looked at the girl's frightened face, her small hands gripping his shirt. He knew he could never abandon them. The soldiers' voices grew louder, echoing through the piles of metal. Daniel quickly grabbed wires, pipes, and sharp scraps he had prepared earlier. If they came too close, he would fight. He would trap them. But inside, he knew this was only a delay, not a solution. As long as the device glowed, the danger would never end. The night dragged on, every sound making his heart race. Finally, the soldiers moved farther away, their lights fading, their voices vanishing into the dark. For now, they were safe, but Daniel knew it was only a matter of time before they returned. He sat back inside, sweat dripping down his forehead, his chest heaving. The device pulsed softly in his hand, almost mocking him. This secret had changed everything. He was no longer just a scavenger protecting two strangers. He was the guardian of something powerful, something that could either save lives or destroy them all. The junkyard shelter, no longer felt like enough. The enemies were too close, the danger too great. Daniel knew he would have to do more than build walls from scrap. He would need courage, cleverness, and a plan strong enough to keep the girl and her mother alive. And as the stars flickered faintly above, he made another silent promise. He would not only protect them, he would protect the secret as well, no matter the cost, no matter the danger. Enemies closing. In the days of silence in the junkyard were over. Daniel had always felt the junkyard was dangerous, but now it was different. The air carried a new kind of weight, a heavy tension that pressed against his chest every time the wind shifted. He knew why. Because the soldiers were no longer searching blindly. They were closing in step by step, guided by the glowing device that pulsed softly in his pocket. The alien girl stayed close to him all the time now. She rarely let go of his arm, her wide eyes always scanning the shadows. She was learning to trust him, but she was also learning fear. Her mother grew weaker by the day, her strength fading, yet her eyes remained sharp with warning. Every night she whispered, "They will come, Daniel. They will not stop." Daniel did not argue. He knew it was true. He had seen the searchlights sweep over the junkyard more often now. He had heard the sharp voices echo through the mountains of scrap. And 2 nights ago, he had seen something worse. Footprints, fresh in the dirt near the shelter. They were not his, they were not the girl's. Someone had been close, too close. That was the night Daniel stopped sleeping, Instead, he worked through the dark hours building traps from the junk around him. He set up wires that would rattle cans, sharpened metal spikes hidden under broken panels, and a small tunnel only he and the girl knew. It was not much, but it gave him a chance. If the soldiers came, he would fight back with the only weapons he had, scrap and courage. The girl tried to help, carrying small pieces of metal or holding the lamp while he worked. Sometimes, she would smile at him with a brave little grin, trying to hide her fear. That smile gave Daniel strength. He had no family of his own. But now, when he looked at her, he felt like he had something worth more than his own life. On the 7th night, the silence broke. Daniel was outside, checking one of his traps when he heard the engines. They were louder this time, closer. His heart jumped. He quickly ran back to the shelter, pulling the door shut behind him. The girl clutched his sleeve, trembling. Her mother raised her weak head, her eyes glowing faintly in the lamplight. "They are here," she whispered. Daniel pressed his ear to the wall of scrap. Voices, dozens of them, boots crunching on broken glass, lights flashing against the piles of wreckage. The soldiers had come. He held the girl close, whispering, "Stay quiet, no sound." His hand tightened on the rusted pipe he kept near the door. He was shaking, but he forced his fear down. They would not take her. Not while he still breathed. The searchlights swept over the shelter. Daniel held his breath. For a moment he thought they would pass, but then came the sound of metal shifting, someone climbing over the pile right above them. The soldiers were too close. A loud crash echoed as one of his traps triggered. Cans rattled, wires snapped. The soldiers shouted, their voices sharp and angry. Daniel's heart raced. His trap had bought him only seconds. The girl whimpered softly, and Daniel placed his hand gently over her mouth. "Shh, quiet," he whispered. Her eyes were full of tears, but she nodded bravely. The soldiers spread out, their boots pounding on the metal ground. One of them came dangerously near the shelter. Through a crack in the wall, Daniel saw the soldier's helmeted face, the beam of his flashlight slicing the dark. Daniel gripped the pipe tighter, his knuckles white. If that soldier opened the door, there would be no choice but to fight. But then, a sharp sound rang out. Another one of Daniel's traps. The soldier turned quickly, shouting orders, and the group moved toward the noise. Daniel exhaled slowly, his body trembling with relief. For now, they had escaped discovery, but the danger was far from over. The soldiers did not leave. They spread through the junkyard, searching pile after pile. Their voices echoed through the night like wolves circling their prey. Daniel knew it was only a matter of time before they came back to the shelter. The mother coughed, clutching the glowing device against her chest. Daniel glared at it, his voice sharp. "That thing is calling them. We can't keep it here." The mother shook her head weakly. "It cannot be destroyed. It must be protected." Her eyes burned with desperation. "If they take it, everything is lost," Daniel cursed under his breath. He didn't understand what made the device so important, but he understood one thing. The soldiers would kill them all for it. And yet he also knew he could not abandon it, because abandoning it meant abandoning the girl and her mother. The night dragged on, every second stretching into an eternity. The soldiers stayed in the junkyard, their lights moving like predators' eyes through the darkness. Daniel sat at the doorway, pipe in hand. The girl curled against him. His body was tense, his mind racing. He had chosen this path, and now he was trapped in it. Finally, as dawn broke, the engines roared again. The soldiers regrouped, their voices fading as they left the junkyard. Daniel slumped against the wall, his body shaking from exhaustion. The girl whispered something in her language, her small hand gripping his arm. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. "Thank you." But he did not feel relief. He knew this was only the beginning. The soldiers were not giving up. They were tightening their net. Next time, they would not leave so easily. Daniel looked at the junkyard around him, his small fortress of scrap. It was no longer enough. He would need to make it stronger, smarter, deadlier, because the enemies were closing in. And when they came, again there would be no hiding. The scrap home of hope. The junkyard had always been a place of death, a graveyard of broken ships and forgotten machines, but now under Daniel's hands it was changing. Piece by piece, scrap by scrap, he was turning ruins into something new. Not just a shelter, not just walls to hide behind, but a home. The alien girl followed him everywhere now, her steps small but eager. She carried pieces of wire, small tools or bits of cloth she found among the piles. Her laughter was still rare, but each time she smiled, Daniel felt as if the world outside the junkyard didn't matter. Her mother, though weak, watched silently, her eyes showing both fear and gratitude. She knew what Daniel was doing was dangerous, but she also knew he was giving them something they had lost long ago. Hope. Daniel worked every day, his rough hands bleeding from sharp metal edges, his back aching from lifting heavy parts. But he didn't stop. He built walls higher, layered with steel panels, strong enough to block the wind and maybe even bullets. He reinforced the roof with engine beams, turning the fragile shack into something solid. He even built a water purifier from filters and wires he found. The first time he poured dirty rainwater, threw it and handed the girl a clean cup, she gasped as if it were magic. Her eyes sparkled as she handed the cup to her mother, always sharing first. Food was harder, but Daniel scavenged through old containers, finding preserved rations hidden deep in the wrecks. He repaired a small cooker using parts from a broken thruster. For the first time in weeks, warm food filled the air with a smell of life. The girl's face lit up as she tasted it. And for the first time, Daniel heard her laugh, a clear, fragile sound that warmed his tired heart. At night, the three of them sat together inside the shelter. Daniel would tell small stories of his childhood, speaking in simple words. The girl did not understand all of them, but she listened with wide eyes, leaning against him. Her mother listened, too, her eyes soft though her body grew weaker each day. Slowly, Daniel began to see what he had built was more than walls. It was trust. It was family. But danger was never far. Sometimes at night, lights flashed across the junkyard as soldiers searched nearby. Daniel would hold the girl close, whispering for her to stay quiet. The traps he had built rattled in the distance, warning him that enemies were close. The soldiers always moved on, but Daniel knew it was only a matter of time before they returned. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the metal towers, the girl tugged Daniel's sleeve. She led him outside, pointing to the small fortress he had built from scrap. Her lips moved, struggling with human words. "Home," she said softly. Daniel froze, his throat tightening. The word was broken, but its meaning was perfect. She had called this place, this pile of junk, her home. Her mother smiled faintly from the doorway, her voice weak but clear. "She has not spoken that word since our world burned." Daniel's heart ached at the thought, but he also felt pride. Maybe the junkyard was nothing to others, but to them, it was a place to live again. The next days, Daniel worked harder than ever. He added a secret escape tunnel, reinforced doors and hidden compartments. He turned broken drones into alarm systems that buzzed when movement was near. He even found old lights and powered them with the battery from a wrecked vehicle. For the first time, the shelter glowed at night like a real home, warm and alive. But while Daniel built, the device pulsed brighter. It was no longer a faint glow. It throbbed with energy, lighting the mother's frail hands. Daniel hated it, for he knew it was the reason danger never left them. But he also saw how the mother clung to it, how she guarded it like her last piece of soul. One night as Daniel worked, the device grew so bright it filled the entire shelter with blue light. The girl gasped and hid behind him. Her mother whispered something in her own tongue, her eyes full of fear. Then, without warning, the light shot upward into the night sky like a beacon. Daniel's blood ran cold. "They'll see it," he muttered, his heart racing. He grabbed the device, trying to cover it, but the glow burned against his skin. The mother shook her head weakly, her voice trembling. "It cannot be stopped. It is calling." "Calling who?" Daniel demanded, but she did not answer, only looked at him with sad, tired eyes. The girl clutched his arm, her small voice shaking. "Danger," she whispered. Outside, the junkyard was silent, too silent. Daniel felt his stomach twist. The Beacon had gone out, but he knew the damage was done. Someone had seen it. Someone was coming. He looked at the walls he had built, the traps he had set, the light he had given them. It was no longer just a shelter. It was a fortress of hope. But would it be strong enough to survive the storm that was about to fall on them? Daniel placed his arm around the girl and looked at the mother. "We're not running," he said firmly. "This is our home now, and I'll fight to keep it." The mother closed her eyes, a faint smile on her lips. The girl pressed closer, to him, her small body trembling but her eyes full of trust. The junkyard fortress stood tall in the fading light, glowing softly against the shadows. It was fragile, built from broken things, but it carried something stronger than steel. It carried hope, but far beyond the junkyard, engines stirred. The enemies had seen the signal, and they were coming. A new beginning or the end? The night sky above the junkyard glowed faintly with stars, but Daniel's eyes were fixed on the horizon where red lights blinked in the distance. Engines roared, sharp and hungry, growing louder by the second. The beacon from the strange device had done its work. The enemies were coming, and this time they would not leave until they found what they wanted. Inside the shelter, the alien girl clung to his arm, her wide eyes trembling with both fear and trust. Her mother sat against the wall, her body weak but her gaze steady. She held the glowing device in her thin hands, its blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had built walls, traps, and hiding places, but he knew deep down they would not be enough against real soldiers. Still, he would fight because there was no other choice. The first explosion shook the junkyard. Metal towers collapsed, sending clouds of dust into the air. Searchlights cut through the darkness as armored soldiers spread out, their boots heavy. On the broken ground, their voices were sharp and cruel, barking orders. "Find the signal. Search every pile. Leave nothing standing." Daniel grabbed his pipe, his hands trembling but firm. He led the girl and her mother through the hidden tunnel he had built beneath the shelter. The narrow passage was dark and cramped, but it opened into another part of the junkyard. From there, he could watch the soldiers without being seen. The soldiers reached the shelter and tore it apart with ease. Daniel's traps rattled and snapped. One soldier screamed as spikes pierced his leg. Another stumbled into a wire that sent scrap crashing down on him. But more came. Too many. Daniel's fortress of hope was being ripped apart piece by piece. The girl whimpered softly, and Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "It's okay, I'm here." But his heart was pounding. He was only one man with scraps, and the enemy was a storm. Suddenly, the glowing device pulsed brighter in the mother's hands. It lit up the tunnel, casting blue light across their faces. Daniel hissed, "Cover it! They'll see us!" But the mother shook her head, her voice trembling. "It is not just danger, it is also hope." Daniel stared at her, confused. But then he noticed something. The light was not only shining upward, it was spreading outward, far away, beyond. The junkyard, he thought he saw another light flicker in the sky. Not red like the soldiers' engines, but white and pure. Was someone else answering the call? The soldiers drew closer, their flashlights sweeping over the tunnel entrance. Daniel gripped his pipe tighter, ready to fight to the last breath. But before they could reach him, the mother pushed the device into his hands. Her eyes burned with fierce determination. "Protect her," she whispered, nodding toward her daughter. "Protect her, even if I cannot." Daniel shook his head, refusing. "No, you need to live too." But her frail body shook with another cough, and he understood the truth. Her strength was nearly gone. The soldiers shouted as they spotted movement. Bullets tore through the junk, sparks flying. Daniel pulled the girl behind him, shielding her with his body. The mother raised a weak hand, and for the first time, Daniel saw power spark from her fingers. A burst of energy shot forward, striking the soldiers with blinding light. They stumbled, shouting in confusion, but the effort drained her completely. She collapsed, her breath shallow. "Mother," the girl cried, tears streaming down her face. Daniel held her close, his heart breaking. He wanted to run, but the soldiers were everywhere, closing in from every side. The junkyard burned with fire and gunfire. This was the end. Unless the device could do more than just shine. Daniel raised it high, the blue glow burning in his hands. He didn't know how it worked, didn't even know if it would respond. But as he shouted with all his strength, "Help us!" the device answered. The blue light exploded outward, covering the junkyard like a shield. The soldiers staggered back, their weapons useless against the sudden wall of energy. Engines roared above. But this time, they were different. White lights pierced the sky, ships descending with banners Daniel had never seen before. Not soldiers of the Empire, something else, something new. The enemy soldiers panicked, retreating as the white ships landed. Figures stepped out, tall and shining, their voices calm and strong. Daniel didn't understand their words, but he understood their actions. They came to help, drawn by the beacon. The battle ended as quickly as it began. The enemy fled into the shadows, the junkyard silent again except for the crackle of fire. Daniel knelt beside the alien mother, her breaths shallow, her eyes dim. The girl held her mother's hand, sobbing. The mother's lips curved into a weak smile. "She is safe now," she whispered. Her gaze shifted to Daniel. "Because of you." Then, with one last breath, she was gone. The girl cried in Daniel's arms, her small body shaking. Daniel held her tightly, his chest heavy with sorrow. He had failed to save the mother, but he had saved the daughter, and maybe, just maybe that was enough. The white lights surrounded them, the strangers speaking softly. Daniel didn't know who they were or what they wanted. But when one of them gently placed a hand on the girl's shoulder, she stopped crying and looked at them with wide, hopeful eyes. For the first time, she was not afraid. Daniel stood tall, the device still glowing faintly in his hands. He looked around at the ruined junkyard, once a place of trash and death. Now it was something else. It was where he had found a family, where he had fought against impossible odds. It was where hope had been reborn. The girl held his hand tightly, refusing to let go. Daniel squeezed back, his voice low but steady. "You're not alone anymore." She looked up at him, her eyes shining through tears, and whispered the word, again, "Home." And in that single word, Daniel knew this was not the end. It was a beginning, not just for him, not just for the girl, but for something greater, a human, an alien child, and a secret that could change the stars. The junkyard had given them nothing, but together they had built everything.